Welcome back, you guys. We are on another dynamic episode of the 10 Dimensions of Wellness. I am your host, Cammie Red, and today we are tapping into the transformative power of mental wellness with a true expert, Linda Galambos. And I hope I'm saying her last name right. I should have checked before I got on. Linda is a specialist in emotional and brain health, and trust me, you're going to want to hear her personal insights on how we can find more peace and happiness, especially during those midlife challenges. Now, in this episode, was on tackling overthinking, letting go of regret, and breaking free from emotional stress. Now, whether you're stuck in a cycle of rumination or just want to stop carrying the weight of past bitterness, Linda's practical advice will light the way. And it doesn't stop there. We're also diving into a book that she co-authored, Living with Intention, to explore how living intentionally can lead to a healthier, more balanced life. So grab a cup of tea, find a comfy spot, and get ready to hear some life-changing insights. Dive into today's conversation with Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Cammie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. First of all, let me. I should have asked this pre-show. How do you pronounce your last name?
You did really great. It's Galambos. Yes.
Okay, Galambos. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I apologize about that. Usually I'm pretty good at getting the names down before the show, but we just moved right into this one. Okay.
I like that.
All right. So my first question to you, Linda, is can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to specialize in emotional and brain health?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. My journey really started in this avenue probably 20 or 30 years ago. My background is in serving people with disabilities. I have a degree in therapeutic recreation, which is providing recreation services to people of all sorts of disabilities. But the area that I enjoyed the most was people that had some emotional and mental wellness issues. And so I always was intrigued by that. But I was also always a leader or a manager where I worked. And the people aspect of leading and managing was always very intriguing to me. And so when I found myself a few years ago needing to reinvent myself in midlife, I really wanted to focus on the aspects of who I am now and really honoring what is more authentic to me. And that is the people side of me and honoring who we are and who we are becoming. Midlife is a time that we really find a lot of challenges come up. We have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves as those changes come in, whether it's changes that are related to perimenopause and menopause, or children leaving home, or even just having achieved a certain amount of success in our careers. And we find ourselves really in the next stage of life wondering, what else can I do? What do I really want to be doing now with my life at this time? And so I reinvented myself, and emotional wellness and brain health was really something that just kept rising to the surface for me when I was deciding on how to form my practice and niche as a coach. And I think part of that is just because of my own background, again, of being somebody who was always told as a kid that I was too sensitive. And I was always that kid, that was me, where I was always kind of the one that was crying at the picnic or at the family gathering. And really kind of embracing that in this second half of life, that I'm more intuitive and that emotional health and emotional wellness is just one part of my being. And how can I honor that more?
I love that. I'm in that midlife experience right now as we speak. And like you said, midlife experiences can often be very surprising. What are some of the most unexpected challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Okay. For me, I really found that the biggest challenge was related to my career. And I had been doing an element of work that, again, as a leader and as a manager, that's what my job was and my focus. But I was in an industry that really wasn't serving me. It was, if you will, it was a little too left brain for me. It was production related and a little bit more left brain than I would have liked. And so I just didn't find it fulfilling after a while. And after being in that career for 12 to 15 years, I was ready for a change and ready to find something that was more fulfilling as I entered that second half of life. Because I think we just all get to a point where it's like, yeah, there's got to be more. I believe
Mhm.
there's more and I want to find it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Now, for someone who's feeling overwhelmed by their thoughts, where's the best place to start in regaining control and finding peace in that mid life situation?
Yeah, two areas that I feel like is one is always taking the time to really process and focus on you and where you're at and what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and honoring that. And to be able to just even sit with it. I think sometimes we want to just push through those feelings. They're uncomfortable sometimes. We don't really want to examine, like, why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening? But when we decide to sit with those feelings and process them, then we can start to get some answers for ourselves. And then we can start to see a little bit more of a roadmap. So that would be number one. I would say number two, that's just as equally as important, is to grow your mindfulness.
Mhm.
And we hear mindfulness a lot. It's a very cliche term right now and maybe even overused, but I have a different definition of mindfulness than probably what you might hear in the mainstream. And for me, mindfulness is paying attention to your mind and
Yeah.
what your thoughts are and what is the self talk. And is that serving you or is it derailing you? How negative is it? We all have a tendency to have negative thoughts. That's common for everybody. But
Mhm.
noticing where we might downward spiral, if you will, because of our own thoughts. And so, really growing that mindfulness is key to really being able to put the past behind us, any regret or resentment that we have, and then also be able to step into a future that's really more geared toward our authentic self.
I love that. I love that. Now, one of the things you emphasized in our pre-interview questionnaire was the importance of breaking free from overthinking. What techniques have you found most effective for helping clients let go of rumination?
Yes, ruminating. Yeah, that was me. I am a confessed overthinker, and a couple things that really helped me was to get outside. I really believe there's a lot of healing power in nature, and that really kind of tied in my therapeutic recreation background with coaching. And that is to get outside and to really enjoy and focus on something outside of yourself. So whether it's in nature or even serving somebody else, those are two things that really help us get from here, where we're really inward focused, to being outward focused. And so those are two main things, but there's lots of things. Again, growing that mindfulness and understanding your self talk, and then being able to grow what we call mental muscle when you're in that rumination and when you're in that negative self talk, is to become aware of it, to catch it, and then to go ahead and flip the switch, if you will, and be able to mentally say, this isn't serving me, and I'm going to think about something different. And it's sometimes it's really hard to do, but as we practice it more, it does become more of like a switch where we can just kind of catch it and then also correct it really quickly.
Okay, now how do you personally maintain a balance between your emotional wellness and the demands of running your business right now?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question because I think a lot of times there's so many different demands when we're entrepreneurs, and we have a tendency to kind of put ourselves last because we're
Mhm.
just continuing to grow our business and serve our clients. And I find myself continuing to go back to being outside, taking mini breaks, if you will. I sometimes call them micro moments of happiness, and creating a list for yourself of things that refresh you, that only take a couple minutes, that don't cost any money. You don't have to get in your car and drive somewhere, but the things that are accessible to you every day that you can do for 2 or 3 minutes to really just refresh and reboot yourself and get grounded again. And it is basic practices like stepping outside once again. It is taking your shoes off and walking through the grass.
Yeah.
It's enjoying that latte and really savoring it instead of just drinking it and going through the motions, like just being present with yourself for even 3 to 5 minutes a couple times a day, I find really kind of resets us and grounds us back to really taking care of ourselves.
How does your personal experience with emotional shape the way that you work, especially women going through a midlife transition?
All right, Cami, can you repeat the question? It was breaking up.
I'm sorry. I said, how has your personal experience with emotional health shaped the way you work with others, especially women going through a midlife transition?
Yes, thank you so much. When I first left the corporate world and was in the process of reinventing myself, I feel like I was, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it, I was kind of an emotional mess. Really kind of stuck in the past and am I really leaving this career behind, and what are the regrets I have? And of course there was some bitterness and resentment having really poured myself into this profession. And then on top of that, my children were leaving home. So I just feel like I was an emotional mess. And the other thing that happens in midlife is we usually get sandwiched not only between launching our children, but then our parents. And
Yes.
I had a father that was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so from the time he was diagnosed to the time he passed away, it was 10 months. And so all of that stuff happened for me within like a 3, maybe 4 year time frame. And I was an emotional mess. And so I took the time. I think it's really important to ask women to do a couple of things. One is to take the time and just acknowledge that you need some healing, right? All of life unfolds in ways that sometimes we don't expect, and we feel a little wounded, and it's okay to stop and pause and go on a healing journey for ourselves. And so helping women navigate that healing journey is something that I like to incorporate into coaching. And the other piece of that is realizing that we have so much of life still left. We're fortunate to live in a time and an age where people are living to be 90 and 100 and in pretty good health if you take the time to take care of yourself, right? Which I know is something you're passionate about, Cami.
Yes.
And yeah, and so I think that when we get to our 40s, 50s, and even 60s and think, what do I want for the next 30 or 40 years, it can feel a little overwhelming. So
Yes.
helping to just redefine what that looks like. And the other thing that I find for a lot of women is that they've put their own dreams and desires on the back burner, if you will. And so they don't even know what they want when they reach this stage of life. And so we need to do a little bit of exploring and investigating and really just dreaming again of what can my life look like in this second half. So two really big factors in the roadmap to getting women who are in midlife kind of back on that track of feeling good about their life and really thriving, because I do think the second half of life is the perfect time for us to really thrive, maybe even more than we did in our 20s and 30s, if we're honest.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm constantly telling my clients, the people that follow me, that after 40, it's almost like your life starts over. And I know exactly what you mean when you say your kids are leaving. My son is 25, he's left the nest. And I'm really rediscovering who I am, even though there's still some of my core values and some of the things that I believe in that I still do for myself. It's just rediscovering, who you are. And I actually answered that this morning on someone's Facebook post. A young lady was saying that she was struggling with, just finding who she was, where she was in life. And, she was feeling down about it. So I explained to her, hey, we all go through that. We all deal with that. What are some surprising benefits that you have discovered from helping clients address their emotional and brain health, especially those who've struggled with it or are struggling with this midlife situation?
Yeah, some of the surprising outcomes I feel like for women, as we kind of continue to go through the struggle of it and then coming out on the other side, is that most women are finding it almost sounds weird, but we're almost like birthing something new out into the
Yeah.
world. And which makes sense as women, right? So a lot of people do want to change careers, or they want to even start working for themselves. They want to do something that's completely different, and they feel like they have more resilience as we also move through that emotional process and get to a place of well-being and on that journey of healing and reinvention. Is that I think there's a strength that comes out because we've kind of been there, done that, right? We raised our families, we had a successful career, and we're building on those strengths now. And we're more authentic now than we probably were then in our 20s and 30s. And the emotional impact that has as people move into this new phase, whether they are just reinventing their career, sometimes people are even just retiring, but they have things that they know they're really passionate about that they're going to continue to do. For example, tutoring students at the high school level or whatever it is. I find that people are just really at peace with it, and yet also walking in this really kind of quiet strength around it. And that's what's really fun to see is saying yes to something that you didn't really know was there. A recent example, I had a client who has worked with visually impaired people at the school level her whole life. And what she's wanting to do now is work with adults as they're aging, if they're having some visual impairments. And so she started her own business, which I believe before we started working together, she did not see that coming. And yet she successfully started her own business through coaching, the time that we spent together, and even got her first couple clients, and is now working both jobs in the sense of like staying with her job until she retires, but also growing this business that she's going to be able to do in retirement on her own terms. And it's just really great seeing how women can be so strong in areas that they weren't even expecting.
Yes, yes. What's one myth about emotional wellness or brain health that you often encounter, and how do you debunk this with your clients?
Good question. I love that. One of the things that I don't know that it's a myth, but a lot of times people don't realize that your brain health is what helps with your mental health
Yes,
and your mental wellness. Because if we're eating junk food and highly processed foods and foods with a lot of artificial colors and flavors, as you know,
mhm,
it does affect our brain.
it
And
does.
and when our brain's not working right, then how can we expect our emotions to be working right and our thought processes to be working right? And it's just all so connected. And so it's not so much as a myth, but I think there's a need for education and awareness around brain health and how it affects mental health. And
Yes,
one of the things I love to coach on is that I love one of the reasons I was so attracted to your virtual summit coming up is because I've always coached on the 4 or 5 dimensions of wellness, and that being our physical health and wellness, and our spiritual and mental and emotional, and that they're all connected to each
yes,
other. When we
yes.
neglect our spiritual health, we're actually also neglecting our emotional health. And when we neglect our physical health, then that's also affecting our emotional health. And so really helping people to be educated in the fact that we're a whole being and a whole person with all these dimensions, and that we can tap into that. And that doesn't mean trying to keep, all the balls in the air at the same time, but it's being aware that, what, I haven't really done anything to nourish my spiritual being. And what can I do this week to do that?
I love that. And you're absolutely right. I focus on all 10 of those aspects of wellness because it just lets you know how interconnected everything is in your life.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
We are on the same page with that for sure.
yeah, your focus on brain health is extremely fascinating. What are some key ways people can keep their brains healthy at their age, especially when it comes to their emotional well-being?
Yes, thank you. One of the there's actually several things, and the beauty is it's not like having to learn something new. Our brain health is very much tied again to all the other aspects of our health. So when we're physically active, and that doesn't mean having to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and running 5 miles. It just means moving our bodies as we age, right? In an intentional way. So when we're physically active and taking care of our physical health, then our brain health comes along. And it's the same thing with our diet. When we hear about a heart healthy diet is the same for a brain healthy diet. So you're not having to really do anything different. It's really just giving you more reasons to pay attention to the things we've heard our whole life, which is get more exercise, eat a healthy and as clean of a diet as you can, and then, of course, sleep. Sleep is another very important factor for our brain because when we're sleeping, our brain is literally processing the day. It's sorting and storing and compartmentalizing all the things that happened and putting it into our subconsciousness so that it can draw upon that for future experiences. And so sleep is huge, and yet not everybody can find a good night's sleep, but there's ways on that as well. And so we coach a lot on sleep habits and patterns and setting up a good evening routine where you can wind down. That's getting off of our devices, as everybody knows, but also just taking time to maybe reflect on your day and process a few things and have a gratitude practice, if you will, to kind of be able to put your mind at rest as well as your body at rest when we go to sleep.
I love that. I love it. My next question for you is, what role does mindfulness play in your approach to emotional and brain health? And how do you incorporate that into your practice as well?
Yeah, mindfulness, as I think I stated earlier, is really probably one of the number one ways that we can grow our emotional well-being, which in turn grows our emotional intelligence as well. And mindfulness practices and meditation and prayer, they all kind of fit in that same container. And so if you're somebody who doesn't feel like you can meditate, we really break it down to the very basic level of what meditation is. And it's really just focusing your mind. And when all the intrusive thoughts come in, like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I needed to start the dishwasher, and oh, I need to return that email when we're trying to meditate, it's really just gently pushing those thoughts back out. Nobody can meditate without having any intrusive thoughts. So that's a myth. So we kind of break that myth that, meditation is this Zen moment and where you're just have emptied yourself of all thoughts. That's just not happening for, I don't think anybody. But so teaching that and then practicing that. So on calls, we will practice some short, what I call sensory meditations, just so
Okay.
that you can learn how to do that. When you have the thoughts come in, how you can just redirect your brain. We have more control. This is another thing that I think is a myth, if you will, is that our mind is just running the show all the time. We actually have more control over our mind and our thoughts than we think we do. And mindfulness and meditation and even prayer help prove that when we can redirect ourselves from that intrusive thought and back to what we were meditating on or back to what we were praying on. So we do practice that when in coaching, just so that clients get a feel for it and then know how that process works and can then implement it each day at some portion of their day, and sometimes even 2 or 3 times a day, because they can be short, again, that 3 to 5 minutes of just a micro moment to yourself of meditating on something very simple or basic.
I love that. Now, you've talked about peace and happiness as outcomes for living a healthier lifestyle. What specific changes have brought you the most peace in your own journey?
Ah, good question. I would say the things that have brought me the most peace and happiness in my own journey would be to carve out time for myself. I think as women, we're so conditioned. Again, that sounds so cliche, but as women, we're so conditioned to continue to serve everybody else
Yeah,
and always put everybody else first, right?
right.
And in order for us to be able to be happy and to find peace, we need to continue to fill our own cup up, right? Because we can't just keep pouring out with an empty cup. And so I believe self care, again, very cliches, but self care and finding what works for you again at this stage of life. Because self-care when we were raising kids might have been like, I just want an hour to myself, right?
Yep.
And self-care as we age might be something more like, I need to really connect with one of my good friends and just have a moment of, some girl time, nothing related to work, nothing related to kids or family, just, a free for all of laughing. And
Yeah.
so finding self-care that works for you as we age is probably one of the things that I've done. And so for me personally, it is about getting out in nature. Still, for me, I find that recenters me and just regroups me. And it's my self care is spending time in creation with the creator. And it might be just watching a sunset or, sitting by a stream of water, something like that. That's what's really brought peace and happiness to me in the last several years.
I love that. Now, how do you help your clients identify when their thoughts are getting in the way of their own happiness?
Mm. That's a good question. There is a kind of a simple way. So I'll just share this with your audience. Lots of times, because our brain is so negatively bent, those negative thoughts and emotions are actually producing negative chemicals in our brain and body,
Mhm.
and hormones, chemicals, whatever you want to call them, the cortisol, that sort of thing. And we can feel that also in our body if, again, we're paying a little bit more attention and we're growing that mindfulness. So, feeling that in our body, like whether our shoulders are up here or jaws clenched, feeling like we might be getting a little bit of a headache or having a hard time focusing, helping them to tune into and recognize those things is one of the ways that I help clients grow that. And then there was a second point that I was going to make around that. Oh, and then just the opposite, really, just the opposite. When we're having more positive thoughts and feeling good about ourselves, it's releasing positive chemicals in our body, the dopamine, the serotonin. And when we tune into our body and our thoughts, and we can see this thought is not making me happy, and not that we need to be happy 100% of the time. That's not what it's about. It's really just being aware of good thought, bad thought, happy
Yes.
feeling, sad feeling, and recognizing that, because so many times our mind has just been on autopilot, right?
Mhm.
Thoughts going, feelings going, we're going, one thing after another. And so we're not really even paying attention sometimes to our body. And so helping them to tune into, this is the line. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it helpful? Is it hurtful? Is this thought serving me, or is this thought derailing me? Same with
Yes.
our emotions. So that I would say is one of the ways that I help clients focus on
Okay.
finding
Now,
themselves.
you've co-authored Living with Intention. What does intentional living mean to you, and how can it impact someone else's mental wellness?
Yeah, good question. Intentional living, the book was written by several different coaches, and the chapter that I wrote was around leaving a legacy, if you will, a little bit of purpose and a little bit of legacy. Because as we age and as we grow, I believe that becomes more important to us. And your legacy doesn't have to be something big, where you are on the national news and you're the CEO of a $1 billion company or even a $1 million company. Your legacy can be anything. The example that I love to give is my own mother, who always used to just send out little notes, scripture verses and note cards to people who were grieving, who had lost, whether it was a pet or a very significant loved one. She had what she called her card ministry, and she would send cards of encouragement and little scripture verses to people. And it's switched recently to where she is now sending it out daily to a group of people in text messages and on Messenger, and even posting it on social media. Kind of the same thing. Just she's coloring. She's finding coloring to be very mindful for her as she's aged. And then she puts an encouraging word with it and she sends it out daily. And to
Oh,
me, that is her legacy.
That is so sweet.
It is, and I like to use that as an example because legacy, that word is so big and it carries such connotations, but it doesn't our legacy can be something small. She will be remembered for that. So many people tell her how her encouragement helped them again, even when it was just the loss of their pets. And so that will be her legacy, and she's really happy with that. And she worked on and off throughout her life, but was never in any high position, never made a lot of money. But this is her legacy. And so, living with intention, there's, I believe, 13 different chapters, and we all co-authored it. And there's things in there around spirituality and finances, very similar to the wellness, the 10 dimensions of wellness, where there's all these different aspects that help us to live our life intentionally. And how can we tune into them so that we're not living life by default, if you will, but more by design.
I love that. I love it. Now, you've written articles and co-authored a book. How do you use these platforms to reach and support individuals seeking mental and emotional wellness?
Yeah, just mostly my platforms are through social media and networking with people in person. Really glad when the world opened back up a few years ago to have in-person networking. So
Yeah.
sharing recent wins, whether it's articles or the book. That was my first book, so I do hope to write another one at some point. And I think the other avenue is just, people are on my mailing list, some of the same traditional ways that everybody works with clients and finds clients. And that is through many avenues in this day and age because we're just so tech oriented,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I really like the in-person avenue as well, just really meeting people face to face because we got to sometimes just put our technology aside a little bit.
We do. We have to unplug to plug in. And I,
Yeah,
I say that often. We have to unplug from technology to plug in with people. So I
ab-
definitely understand that one.
that's
Now,
perfect.
with the rise of mental health awareness, how do you think people's understanding of brain health has evolved in recent years?
Mm. I think it is evolving, and I would love to see it evolve even more. I think we need to do more at the school level and in our education system,
Mhm.
starting even at a young age. You can start teaching children mindfulness, and in the same way that I start adults, and that is just what is a sensory meditation. And an example of a sensory meditation is, what am I hearing right now? And when we're all quiet for a moment and we just tell our brain to focus on what we're hearing, that's a perfect example of something that can be done at an elementary level. And then continuing on through high school with educating students around our thoughts and ruminating and what is that and what to do when you are overthinking. And I believe that we're starting to see some of that. My brain health certification is through Dr. Amen, and he has a program that you can take into the schools to start educating at the high school level. And we're seeing more of that, more focus on that in small doses, though, not anything on a large scale. But I feel like there's so much more awareness now, and part of that awareness is because we can see what's happening in the brain.
Yeah.
20 years ago, they were just starting to do MRIs on the brain and SPECT scans on the brain. But now we have a whole database of what's happening in our brain when we're meditating, what's happening in our brain and the effects of alcohol. And so using that as our leverage to educate people is really just taking off. And so that's exciting. Um, so
I
lots
love
of different platforms, speaking to students is another avenue that I would like to grow for myself.
Oh, good. Oh, that's a great goal to have. Now,
Yeah.
what has been the most rewarding aspect of helping clients improve their emotional and brain health?
Mm. I just really love seeing people have like that paradigm shift or
Mhm.
even just the small aha moments. But sometimes there's a bigger paradigm shift where they're seeing how maybe something like their emotions or even a learning disability played a role and shifted them. And so they start to connect the dots and bringing all of your life experiences together and feeling good about that, right? That this has happened for you and not to you. So many times we can play the victim card and feel like a lot of things in our life have happened against us and that why me kind of syndrome, but really helping people to have that paradigm shift to see that life is happening for us and
Yes.
what is the opportunity in the things that come our way and what is the gift and that silver lining in things that actually aren't even very positive at first,
Yes.
helping them to see and seeing that shift in clients is so rewarding for sure.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm often telling people to look for the lesson in the situation. So if you feel like it's something that maybe was a negative in your life, look for the lesson in it. Find the lesson, find something to be grateful for, even if it's just the lesson. So
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe in what you're saying.
Yeah.
So how do you stay motivated and positive in both your personal life while helping others on their wellness journey?
Mm. I think motivation kind of comes when you're more aligned. This is what I'm finding at this point. I don't. I kind of jump out of bed every morning, excited to work with the people that I'm coaching, and to work on my own business, whether it's revamping my website. Whereas when I was working more in the corporate world, it felt like, pulling myself out of bed, going to work. And I think when we're more aligned, we're more naturally motivated,
Yes.
which is always good. And I think that is another good indicator for people when we're really struggling to get out of bed in the morning and we're really struggling to get through the day, that something's just not right. And that we
Mhm.
need to take the time to figure out what that is and then make the changes accordingly.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, this is my last question for you. If you could leave listeners with one piece of advice about emotional wellness, brain health, or living with intention, what would it be? And then at the end, I want you to give our listeners the ways to get in contact with you.
Okay. All right. I would say my one piece of advice would be to really grow your awareness. Before anything can change in our life, we need to grow our self awareness. And what I mean by that is just paying attention again to the details of our life, paying attention to what our body's doing. If we're always having headaches, paying attention to what our digestion is doing, paying attention to if you're able to get out of bed or not get out of bed easily in the morning. When we grow that self awareness, we build the foundation for being able to grow anything we want in our life, truly, and to be able to dream big and craft the life that we sometimes dream about, but aren't really seeing come to fruition. So that would be my advice, is to continue on the self awareness journey. And then ways people that can get in touch with me, I am on social media on Instagram. It's at Linda_Galambos. And you can see my name spelled right here. So exactly how you see it, with just the underscore between Linda and Galambos. I'm also on LinkedIn, same name, Linda Galambos on LinkedIn. And then my website, everything is Linda Galambos. So my website is lindagalambos.com as well. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. All right. So I'll include that in the description of today's podcast. But Linda, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this episode. And you guys, that's not the only way to see Linda. Linda is going to be one of our featured speakers at the 10 Dimensions of Wellness Summit. And you can see the link for it going across the bottom of the screen. So I'm super excited to see her presentation and what she's going to bring to the table for us.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Cami. And I'm so excited about the summit as well. Really looking forward to it and connecting with people directly, and can't wait.
I'm excited as well. Okay, you guys, this has been another enlightening episode of the 10 Dimensions of Wellness podcast. A huge thank you to Linda Galambos for sharing her invaluable insights on emotional and brain health. Her wisdom on letting go of overthinking and bitterness is a powerful reminder that peace and happiness are within our reach. If Linda's advice resonated with you, be sure to check out her co authored book, Living with Intention, for more ways to cultivate a life of balance and wellness. And remember, mental health wellness is a journey, but you don't have to take it alone. Every small step counts. And Linda will also be, again, one of our featured speakers at the 10 Dimensions of Wellness Virtual Summit on December the 14th. So make sure you grab your early bird tickets now. Thank you all for tuning in. If you love this episode, spread the word and share it with someone who could use a little more peace in their life. And until next time, be kind to your mind, live with intention, and keep pursuing your wellness journey. Take care and stay well. And don't forget, like, follow, and subscribe and download this on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much. And you guys have an awesome rest of your day, night, or wherever you are.